The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Welcome to The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu. We got a great show for you. Of course, trade deadline less than 24 hours away, so a lot of guys anticipating drinking a lot of coffee beforehand. And of course, those guys I'm talking about is Greg Buchanan, of course, my co-host.
Yeah, I'm just all a tingle.
All right, that's your lips. Those are your words, not mine. And of course, we can't forget Andrew Brethauer. Of course, you are the sports editor for the Lloydminster Source.
I am.
And
Not drinking
here.
coffee though. No, I'm not a coffee guy.
Well, you're really? Maybe an
not at
espresso
all.
shot? Nothing.
Really?
No, not at all.
Seriously?
No.
You're in the media,
I
you
have
don't drink coffee?
Not at all.
At least donuts, though.
Look at my
No,
look at
that's
this
not
figure. No.
All right, well, you know what? Maybe if you're in St. Louis, you might grab a treat. Because certainly if you're a Blues fan, it was a treat on Friday when you heard the news that Steve Ott and, more importantly, Ryan Miller from Buffalo are now heading down to the gateway of the West. That's the Blues in St. Louis. And I think this is a great deal. Of course, they didn't really give up too much, Jaroslav Halak, but you kind of expected something was going to happen. A few players are kind of thrown in and a few draft picks. Overall, this is probably one position that the Blues needed to really solidify. And they did that by picking up Ryan Miller, a former silver medalist or silver medalist in 2010, and a guy who's led his team to a conference final. Guys, do you feel that the acquisition of Ryan Miller puts the St. Louis Blues as the team to beat in the West?
I don't put them in the team to beat. It's so hard in the Western Conference. How do you knock Anaheim, San Jose, LA, put all these teams together? You're not knocking that. Like, sure, with Ryan Miller, now St. Louis is probably a Western Conference final favorite, but this is still the playoffs. Anything could happen, and you got to beat Chicago. Yeah. Chicago's always going to be the team to beat, defending champions. You got to go through Chicago.
You know what this could be? This could be that first domino that goes down, and the rest of the teams going, yeah, St. Louis did this, now we're going to have to do this. If I'm San Jose, Anaheim, Los Angeles, Chicago, do we need to upgrade in certain areas too? Is Miller going to carry them through? He's a good, solid goaltender, but that was a couple of years ago. Halak, as bad as, they question whether or not in certain games he kind of fell apart. But a lot of times his numbers are pretty decent.
Well, I'll say this. Ryan Miller's numbers are in the upper echelon, and that's being on a crappy team in Buffalo. He's one of the guys at top in save percentage, tops in terms of his goals against, and he's on a bad team that can't play defense. You put a team around him, those numbers are going to continue to go up. You can't say that he's having a bad year. He's having a great year on a bad team, put him on a good team, contenders.
But you know what, at the same time, a goalie on a bad team can look actually pretty good because on a bad team, he faces a lot of shots and he lets maybe 3 or 4 in. His save percentage is pretty good because he faced 50 shots. Now he goes on a hockey club like a Hitchcock team that he's only going to allow maybe 25 shots in a playoff game if they're playing their game to perfection. Now he has to make those big saves. And not saying he's not going to do that, but at the same time, there's a difference between playing net on a really crappy team like Buffalo and playing net on a team that does not give up a lot of shots like St. Louis.
And let's look at experience too. This is a guy who hasn't made it to the Eastern Conference Finals in how many years? Is that going to translate to the Western Conference? Is he going to be that goal that's going to take you all the way? He's never played in the finals. This is the goal that needs to, I'm betting on guys like Corey Crawford who've been to the show all the way. I think experience is going to play into this just as much as, the defense in front of him and the forwards in front of him.
There's a few guys in terms of goaltending. We'll stick with that theme that might be on the trading block come Wednesday or haven't been traded. Talking about Roberto Luongo, a guy who's a little disgruntled with John Tortorella, deciding to go with Eddie Lack instead of Luongo himself to start the Heritage Classic. Now, as a competitor, you want to do that. You want to be the guy. It doesn't matter how many games you played, if it's 1 or 82. You want to play every game possible. Now, he's created a lot of friction by I'm talking about John Tortorella and what's going on with the Vancouver Canucks in the dressing room. With Luongo and him being upset with the whole situation that happened over the weekend, do you see him on the outside maybe asking for a trade, wanting to leave this Wednesday?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. You know what? You almost have to feel sorry for Bobby Lou because everything you went through last year, and then you thought, now, and then all of a sudden Torts comes on the scene. And Torts likes to play the game. He likes to have the players just so confused, not knowing what's going to happen next, and get them so riled up that it's going to get these guys to play. Well, actually, for Bobby Lou, I think he's a different personality. He's a goalie, and right now he looked good on Sunday. He had nice new pads, blocker, glove, helmet, or mask, and he looked awesome. But did you see his face on the bench? he was one disgruntled guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't deal him now, but they may deal him during the summertime.
Pretty sure his Twitter account's going to get a lot more followers in the next couple of days at least. I can't see them trade him. They did this again. What day is this? We're back to the whole trading.
So is Eddie Lack
again.
going to leave in a draft pick for next season? Maybe
needs
pick
to
up
go
another
this time.
Bull
What's he
Rat?
do?
What's going on? Because Eddie Lack was the guy who was given the start because of what he did. He said he earned it, much like what's happening with Marty Brodeur and Corey Schneider, which they said, Peter DeBoer said, you know what, I'm going with the guy who's played well up to this point, and that was Mr. Schneider. Guys, is Lack the guy that's going to take over in Vancouver?
I think eventually someone has to take over. Luongo's getting to that point where he is, on the last stretch of his season, last stretch of his career. Eventually he's going to get moved. Can't say if it's going to be this year or not. I don't know if this trade deadline is it going to be today or tomorrow. Is he going to get moved? We've had this before. This is the same discussion we had with Corey Schneider. Are we going to have this again with Eddie Lack now? It's eventually they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to say to Luongo, okay, we need you gone. We're going to trade you, and actually just do it and stop making this pony show about where we're going to do with them, and just do it already.
That's going to be tough for a GM, especially like a guy like Dave Nonis. But I want to get to a different topic now. I want to talk about a different GM, and that's Steve Yzerman. Of course, his situation with Marty St. Louis, the little disgruntled, issue. I don't know if there's a lot of tension being built up, or is that just the media speculation. But you saw a lot of anger and a lot of displeasure by St. Louis, and he seemed, even though he won a gold medal and was picked first when it came to an injury that happened to Steven Stamkos, he still seems a little bitter. Does this hurt their relationship, and does St. Louis have the right to ask for a trade?
You know what, and I don't know if this is the overactive imagination of the media members to make up this story, but Marty could have cleared everything, just said, no, I haven't, and he really didn't when he was asked about it, and that's the concern thing for me. I don't think he has a right to ask for a trade. I think he's a captain, he's a leader on that team, they're a young team, Tampa Bay. He has to grow up and grow a set of you-know-what and say, hey, I'm good to go for the rest of the season.
I think he has the right to ask for it. Every player has a right to ask for a trade, but it's a time and a place. You're in a playoff spot right now. You are the leader of the team. You don't have Stamkos right now. So, what message are you sending the rest of that team?
And that's scary how good this team is without Stamkos. Him in the lineup is going to make this team a whole lot better. So St. Louis has done what he had to do to help this team become great. But, Andrew, what do you have to say to this? I think it's fair for him to ask for a trade, and I think if he wants to go, he can go.
If he wants to go, he has to go. Is Yzerman going to trade the guy right now, the best player, the Art Ross winner right now? Can you get rid of him without Stamkos back in the lineup? When you are 1 point ahead of the Maple Leafs right now for that playoff spot in the Atlantic, you're in the wild card, but do you want that wild card spot, or you could drop out of that too? So right now you're not trading your best player right now.
I think as a captain he can't ask for a trade, and I think he's been around the game long enough, and he knows that he should go out and squash this and say, no, I'm happy here in Tampa Bay. I'm a leader of this team. We want to make the playoffs. But he didn't, and that's the real disappointing thing for Martin St. Louis.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we return, we're going to still talk about trade deadline and, of course, some of the trades that happened earlier this afternoon.